Welcome back to Conveniently Unspoken, where we discuss history's mysteries and the untold narratives of those behind the curtains involved in the major events of our world's recent history. Today we are here to focus on the connection between the expiration of the First National Bank, potential involvement by the Rothschilds or the Illuminati, masterminding the War of 1812, which was a significant conflict between the United States and Great Britain. While this war was marked by tensions over trade, maritime rights, and territorial expansion, we will explore the possibility of this being just another financial gambit instituted by the most powerful banking family in London and other European strongholds. During this period, the Rothschild family had emerged as a prominent force in international finance, and by the early 19th century had established an extensive international banking network with branches in major European capitals. They had close ties with various European governments and played a key role in financing wars and government bonds. As we discussed in a previous video, they were potentially linked to funding both sides of the Napoleonic Wars. Given their financial influence, it is plausible that they had a vested interest in both the First National Bank's expiration and instrumenting the War of 1812. First, let's look at the landscape and perspective of the country prior to the war and how it viewed the national bank internally. The decision not to renew the charter of the First Bank of the United States was primarily driven by a combination of political and economic factors. The expiration of the bank's charter in 1811 and the subsequent decision not to renew it can be understood through the following key reasons. The first was political opposition. The First Bank of the United States was a contentious issue between Federalists and Democratic Republicans. The Federalists, led by Alexander Hamilton, who was a suspected but unverified agent of the Rothschild dynasty, strongly supported the bank, seeing it as essential for a stable and prosperous economy. Alexander Hamilton was the pioneer behind the First National Bank and wrote about its requirement in his report relative to a provision for the support of public credit as well as Federalist No. 30. On the other hand, the Democratic Republicans, led by Thomas Jefferson and James Madison, opposed the bank, viewing it as an overreach of federal power and a tool to benefit wealthy interests. Madison himself feared that the securities from the government debt would fall into foreign hands. Dr. Thayer Watkins of San Jose State University claims that 70% of the central bank was owned by foreigners and notes that Britain was the primary source of capital for the United States during this era. Given that the United States relied on British capital and British banks were dominated by the Rothschilds, it's safe to say the family had a substantial stake in the First National Bank, potentially through proxy. Upset at losing this profitable monopolistic venture, Nathan Rothschild is said to have declared,
Either the application for the renewal of the charter is granted, or the United States will find itself involved in a most disastrous war. Teach the impudent Americans a lesson. Bring them back to colonial status.
These quotes have not been verified and serve as the basis of the Rothschild 1812 conspiracy thesis. Another internal dispute was that of constitutional concerns. Many Democratic Republicans, including Thomas Jefferson, believed that the establishment of a national bank was unconstitutional. They argued that the Constitution did not grant the federal government the specific authority to create a bank, and that such powers were reserved to the states. Interesting to note here that in a previous video, discussing the French Revolution and potential Illuminati involvement therein, we associated Thomas Jefferson with Marquis de Lafayette as brother Masons who may or may not have been influenced by Illuminati penetration into Masonic lodges before their disbandment as proponents of both the French and American revolutions, which were at their core anti-monarchic, a guiding principle of Illuminati teachings. Then there were of course regional disputes. The location of the First Bank of the United States in Philadelphia, a northern city, fueled resentment among southern and western states. Some felt that the bank catered more to the commercial and financial interests of the North, neglecting the economic needs of other regions. Of course, state banking also had their interests. As the bank's charter neared expiration, state-chartered banks were gaining popularity and power. Many state banks viewed the First Bank of the United States as a competitor and wanted its charter to expire to expand their own influence in the banking industry. Let's not forget the economic conditions afoot. In the years leading up to the expiration of the bank's charter, the United States experienced a period of economic growth and increased financial stability. Some argued that the need for a central bank had diminished and the private banking sector could adequately serve the country's financial needs. Considering these factors, President James Madison, a Democratic Republican, chose not to seek the recharter of the First Bank of the United States. The bank's charter expired in 1811, and the United States operated without a central bank until the Second Bank of the United States was established in 1816. Now for the War of 1812, which had a significant impact on international trade and maritime rights. With the United States embroiled in a conflict with Great Britain, a major maritime power, trade disruptions and embargoes could have presented both challenges and opportunities for the Rothschilds, depending on how they navigated the shifting economic landscape. Some historical accounts and conspiracy theories allege that the Rothschilds engaged in secret diplomacy during the War of 1812. They were accused of providing loans and financial support to both the United States and Great Britain, effectively playing both sides to maximize their profits and influence. Due to the costs of the war, life without a central bank was short-lived. Records from the Bureau of Public Debt reported that total public debt increased from $45.2 million on January 1, 1812, to $119.2 million as of September 30, 1815. In effect, the country found itself in circumstances similar to those after the Revolutionary War, mounting debt from a war with England, soaring prices, and devalued money from rising inflation. As such, President James Madison authorized the creation of the Second Bank of the United States in 1816, despite his previous convictions against it. We won't speak much further about the Second National Bank as we have a future video to explore that coming out shortly. So, with all the controversy surrounding the First Bank of the United States reflects the ongoing debate over the appropriate role of the federal government in economic and financial matters, a discussion that continues to shape American economic policy to this day. The United States faced financial instability during and after the War of 1812. The absence of a central banking system led to currency shortages, inflation, and difficulties in managing government finances. As a result, the case for a centralized banking institution gained traction. Now, how would the non-renewal of the First National Bank affect the Rothschild banking dynasty? Well, let us first consider again the famous but paraphrased quote by Nathan Rothschild in which he stated,
Die WME control of a nation's money supply, and IKEA not who markets its loss.
The Rothschild family's financial influence and global reach could have prompted skepticism and opposition to the establishment of a centralized national bank. Critics may have been concerned about the potential concentration of power and the influence of foreign financial interests on American affairs. The non-renewal of the First National Bank Charter presented economic opportunities and risks for the Rothschild family. On one hand, it reduced potential competition from a centralized American banking institution. On the other hand, it increased financial instability in the United States, affecting the Rothschilds' investments and operations. Despite the non-renewal of the First National Bank Charter, the Rothschild family's global financial influence remained formidable. Their extensive banking network and close ties to European governments allowed them to maintain a strong presence in international finance, regardless of the events in the United States. However, by crippling the American economy through a prolonged war effort and profiting from the interest they may have received through loans or bonds to fund said effort, the Rothschilds may have looked to force America's hand into granting them a permanent foothold in the growing United States. Many policymakers and economists recognized that a centralized banking system would help address the issues of currency stability, credit availability, and government financing. Unfortunately, there are no records to show the Rothschilds as stockholders of the First or Second National Banks, but their network and reach to this point had already expanded across Europe's most prominent financiers and businesses, and they may have leveraged these individuals or groups, or even financed them in their initial investments into the national banks through proxies. Well, that's it for this session, folks. Make sure you continue this journey of discovery and exploration as we challenge the conventional, seek the truth, and embrace the untold stories that reveal the tapestry of our shared past. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring the notification bell to be part of this intriguing endeavor. Together, let's uncover the hidden truths that have shaped our world. And remember, the truth may be conveniently unspoken, but it's worth seeking. See you next time.